We all have our own path to walk. It may be obstructed, it may be winding, and no doubt it will have peaks and valleys, but it is ours alone. Like onlookers at a marathon, friends and family can offer encouragement along the way, but ultimately we decide the trajectory that we take. In this series, Juliet Dorris-Williams offers a clear view from her path that may inform your decisions as you move toward finding your faith. One part spirituality, one part real-world practicality, and a serious splash of fun. Here's Juliet.
Hi, I'm Juliet. Welcome to Finding Faith. Among other things, I'm the author of Leaving Church, Finding Faith, and I am here in this space chatting with you about the book and other things that may bubble up when we are talking about matters of faith and life and how those two things intersect. And because if you're at all anything like me, they always intersect. So I've been thinking a lot about authenticity this week. I read a couple of Brene Brown posts, and that sent me down a rabbit hole, as I'm subject to do at any random time when something tickles my curiosity. Side note, smartphones are dangerous things for people like me who get broadsided by something that tickles our curiosity. Having that encyclopedia in your pocket or purse is a serious and delicious time suck. Anywho, I jotted down this note to myself from that particular rabbit hole, and Brene Brown may have said this, and I don't know because I don't remember, but I just jotted down the note very quickly. After a while, we can become confused and unable to identify the difference between the mask we wear in different circumstances and who we really are. So in my book, I talk about the unlayering process that I have had and am having as I faithfully navigate in the world as a fully awake and aware human being. I've talked about that a bit here on this podcast also. I'm thinking about this because occasionally I catch myself doing church speak. Even here in this space, I find myself in that church arena that lives in my heart and lives in my head and talking about faith from that context. And it's not that I don't know that I'm doing it. It sometimes surprises me how deep my belief system is, despite the fact that I'm completely outside of the church system. I am a product of that system. And I don't know that I mean that in a bad way. In truth, I wouldn't be that product at all if I had not had deep, personal, life-saving, life-changing experiences that molded and shaped me into the person I am today. And so when I say that I am having, present tense, an unlayering process even now, I know, and now you know, that to be a true thing. And because, friend, you are here with me, my voice to your ears, you may be going on that journey with me. And that's okay, because the one thing I know for sure is that every journey we take is always better with friends. In a previous episode, I talked about being wooed back to God and back to the church after walking away for a time. Once I returned into the fold, one of the things that became a building block, it became foundational, was being able to experience God and to articulate what I understood about God was God as a parent. And this is in contrast to what you usually hear, which is God as a father, and what you hear more rarely, but also still true, God as mother. But for me, simply God as parent, which encompasses both. And for me, at that time in my life, it was pivotal. It was comforting to know that I didn't have to think of or anthropomorphize God in a particular way, for it was in that time and in that space I was really seeking and needing guidance on how to do life in the particular circumstances I was navigating at the time. Connecting with God as parent, as teacher, as guide was comforting in ways that I had not previously experienced, not ever. And once a foundation is laid, unless you bulldoze it up, it's sort of permanent. And for me, God as parent was that permanent foundation that anything that came after that with respect to teaching, preaching, or even seminary study, nothing could bulldoze that away. Yet, as I continued through the years in church institution, you may call that organized religion, I assimilated like the Borg on Star Trek. Church institution was like resistance is futile. And even though your core belief system is unchanged, that foundation is still there. Another layer gets placed over top of that foundation. It's still there. You still have connection with it, but the system, the group, the community that you have aligned yourself with doesn't think of God in quite the same way as you, and you go with that flow. And that flow is easy. Swimming in the direction of the current is always easy. And as you are swimming, there are other things, other streams that you slip into, a certain way of talking, a certain way of dressing, the things you used to do that you no longer do, discarding those things that no longer serve you, those habits, choices that may not fit easily into the flow of where you are traveling with this particular group of people. And I need to say that some of those things, self-destructive things, they need to go. They needed to be let go of. So this is a good thing. And when you are learning new ways to be in the world, being with a group of people who understand that journey is lovely. It's necessary. It's helpful. The connections you make because of the things you share together once or twice a week, having an experience of ritual is what I used to think of as fuel for the week. That ritual, the singing, the teaching, the sharing of the peace, and if I was lucky, the sharing of the table, the fruit of the vine, whether that be wine or juice, and the bread, the body and the blood, also known as communion. That very word, communion, spiritual union between Christ and his followers, sacred acts practiced all across Christendom. It made that flow even more richer and colorful, and whoosh, it flowed over and under and ultimately through you. At some point, going against that flow is not even something you think about. You don't even realize that there are parts of yourself that you are no longer in touch with. The layers continue to build atop that permanent foundation. And in my case, I didn't realize that there were layers until I started peeling them off. At that point in time, I could no longer differentiate the layers from the foundation. So when I started pulling off the layers, one of which was a simple, yeah, don't think I'm up for church today. That day, or that today, lasted for weeks before I realized I still had fuel for my week. I still had spiritual fuel to go out and do the work I was called to do. I still had spiritual fuel to love and meet people right where they were. I still had spiritual fuel to feel that I was still beloved by my Creator. Without those weekly rituals, I still had spiritual fuel that I could share with others. My cup of spiritual fuel was never empty. And that was the first of many aha moments on this side of leaving church. Understand, I was deeply devoted deeply committed to the practices and the tenets of my faith. I was then, and I remain so. But going back to that note I jotted down, after a while we can become confused and unable to identify the difference between the mask we wear in different circumstances and who we really are. I don't know that I was confused, but I was certainly unaware that the flow was a type of mask I took on willingly, because the flow is a cozy, comfortable place. And the longer I stayed in that flow, the harder it was to differentiate the me that was me from the me that was assimilated into the flow of that system. I should say also that that flow was sometimes rocky. Those rocks had names like racism, misogyny, homophobia, rejection, judgment, and others. But the flow would continue around those rocks, and you sometimes learn to bury those rocks somewhere in your psyche. You bury them under layers of politeness. It is that politeness that fuels the flow also. It's sad now when I think about it, how we polite ourselves into not making waves, not standing against certain things in our systems and society. Yes, even the system of the church. The more layers you pull off, the more difficult it is to go with the flow. A quote from my book says this: "Finding your purpose is all about finding yourself. To find yourself, you must shed the layers. The more in touch you are with the core of you, the foundation upon which your identity is built, the more at peace you are, the more in touch you are with the you that is true." And that, my friend, is golden. It's like apples of gold in settings of silver. And that lovely phrase is from the Old Testament book of Proverbs, chapter 25, if you're interested. I am outside of church institution, but the church that is built upon the solid rock of Jesus' love for you and for me is strong. And it's not just contained in a building. Just like me, you have access to it now. You have access to it always. And that, my friend, is an everlasting, fueling flow. And for that, I am grateful. That's all for now. Sending you peace, sending you love. Stay safe. Until next time, this is Finding Faith.